I just got better really quickly. I just learned really quickly. I learned the shots. I could watch it on TV and I could play it.
Mm-hmm.
I always enjoyed being the target, being the guy that everyone wants to beat. I loved being the best player in the world. I've seen some players get to world number one and then shrink because they don't like being the target. They'd rather be the underdog. Yeah, I remember loads of shots that have cost me titles more than ones that I've won.
Right.
Because that stayed with me more, and that was more intense an emotion.
He's just recently eclipsed some of the records that you've got. How would you summarise it?
Well, I mean, I wasn't happy when he equalled my 7. I mean,
Right.
People asked me before, and I said, no, I don't want. Of course, I don't want him to equal my record. It was my record.
This is Up Front with me, Simon Jordan. I believe there are a lot of vacuous, uninformed, unchallenged opinions out there. I want to get to the bottom line and cut through the nonsense. So with this podcast with William Hill, I'm going to get people with strong views who think they can stand them up to proper scrutiny. There's a good chance I might learn something along the way, and more importantly, so might you. In today's episode, I'm joined by possibly the greatest ever exponent of his sport, one that's embedded in the culture of the United Kingdom, snooker. His was a 27-year journey from teenage star to the youngest ever world champion. He dominated snooker for virtually an entire decade, world number 1 for 8 consecutive seasons, and winning a record number of world titles in the modern era. Simply put, a legend and the king of the Crucible. Stephen Hendry, welcome to Up Front.
Thank you very much.
We've got one of these rare beasts in today, ladies and gentlemen. We've got someone that arguably would say is the GOAT or one of the GOATs of his sport. We've had some very interesting people come in over the last 18, 19 episodes, but very rarely do we get a GOAT.
Yeah, the GOAT now is debatable, obviously, with what Ronnie has done in the game. He's equalled my 7 world titles. He's taken over pretty much all of my records because obviously he's still playing and I'm not. Mm-hmm. And I think he has taken the game to a new level in terms of break building, cue ball control, just playing the game to a level that I don't think
It's been seen before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm one of the GOATs. One of the GOATs. Tiger Woods. I heard an interview one time, and they were talking about whether he was the GOAT or Jack Nicklaus, and he said, "As long as I'm in the conversation, then I've done something." So that's how I feel.
Well, it's one of those sort of bullshitty titles, isn't it? But it's not a bad one to have, is it? If you're going to be included in the conversation as one of the GOATs.
Exactly. If you're in the conversation, you've done something well.
Absolutely. One of the things we do, Stephen, is try to ascertain. I suppose the best way of expressing it is, what is someone's why? What made them achieve the things that they have? What made them manifest all the outcomes that they have? So, looking at you, Stephen Hendry, the snooker player, starting or getting his first snooker table at 12 and winning the world championship and being the top player in 9 years is a remarkable ascent, but it comes from a position of somewhere. What was it? What was it that drew you to snooker in the first place?
I hadn't played it before I got the small table for Christmas.
Right.
I'd been out with my mum in Dunfermline. My dad had fruit shops, so one of them was in Dunfermline. I think they were sort of struggling for what to get me for Christmas. And we seen a small table in the shop window of John Menzies,
Right.
Or John Mingus, depending
What, like a 6'3"?
Yeah, however you want to pronounce it. And my mum kind of said, "Well, what do you think about that kind of thing?"
Were you sports motivated previously?
I'd played a bit of badminton, a bit of football at school, primary school. Never stood out,
Right.
But I was in teams. Never really played any dead ball sport.
Right.
And then, so I said, "Yeah, fine. Whatever kind of thing." And I got the table for my Christmas, and basically just every other present or that was on the floor, I just forgot about it. I just played. And I found it that I could just get into the position of playing. I didn't, you watch people who can't play snooker, you try and get their hand into the position of a bridge, and they just can't do it for whatever.
Right.
I mean, it's, to me, I think, how can you not put your fingers on the table, raise your knuckles and make a bridge hand? But if you can't do it, you can't do it. I could do it. I just put my hand on the table and I could play. Within 2 or 3 weeks, I was making sort of 40, 50 breaks.
Right.
But the talent came from my father's father was a brilliant player. He died before I was born.
Okay.
So I never got to meet him or obviously see him play. He was like pretty much professional standard.
Did your father play?
No. Well, he did, but he was useless. He could put 2 balls in a row.
Thanks, Ted.
Yeah. He couldn't play. So it kind of skipped a generation.
Right.
So I was just having great fun, beating my dad, beating my brother, beating my uncles. And it was like kind of cool to be in the band, to be better at people at something. It's the first time I think
But it's
in my life.
remarkable. But it's remarkable, Stephen. I mean, you're picking up a cue. I'm assuming this is right. You're picking up a cue for the first time at 12.
Yeah, so
Right.
3 weeks before my 13th birthday. I was 13 in January. Yeah.
Right. So even more remarkable because 2 years later, you're winning Scottish amateur championships, aren't you?
Yeah, turning pro at 16.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is remarkable. When we talk about the preparation and getting yourself into a position, and we'll get to the remarkable ascent, because for you to be at 13 years of age, nigh on 13 years of age, and all of a sudden be in a space in a couple of years of looking at winning, or not looking at winning amateur tournaments and looking at turning pro, but what is the application and the determination and the actual dedication that's required to get to these levels as quickly as you got to?
I used to learn. I learned everything from watching the players on TV. Once I started playing on the small table, I started watching on TV, getting interested in it. So I basically would watch TV or record on a VHS or Betamax or whatever it was in the day, and watch the shots back, and then go to my small table and try and copy them. You couldn't do because the way the balls react on a small table, it's not the same. So my dad would start taking me up once a week to the local snooker club, which was a real old. There wasn't even a bar. There wasn't anything. It was just a little office where you could buy a can of Coke. It was smoky. You walked in, but I just loved it. The atmosphere.
Did he get it? Did he see instantaneously? Did he go, hello?
Yes.
Your father?
Yeah.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly. He was when I started playing when I started moving to the full size table, playing junior tournaments around Scotland as a 13-year-old. My dad was telling everyone who would listen that I was going to be world champion.
Right.
He'd obviously seen his father play. He was a snooker player. Maybe didn't watch it all the time on TV, but he was a snooker player, and he would tell everyone. And I just got better really quickly. I just learned really quickly. I learned the shots. I could watch it on TV and I could play it. Mm-hmm. I could see him play a shot, and then I went and played it.
Right.
Without thinking how did he play it, or I needed to play it for a day. I could just play the shot. It was just something that I could do. And every time I played, because obviously in those days I was young. I mean, these days people are starting at 4, 5, 6 years old. It's ridiculous ages playing.
Are they?
Really early. Yeah, in China especially, they're starting very, very young. Ding Junhui, I think, started at 6.
Right.
But in those days, I was playing in places where I wasn't even allowed to be, like local leagues, British Legion clubs, where I had to sort of smuggled in, play my 2 frames and smuggled out again. So I was constantly amongst older people, better players. And I always think you learn from losing. You don't really learn from winning. You learn a little bit about yourself if you're a winner
I think
or
that's
not.
right. Yeah.
But you learn from defeats and mistakes.
Not too many, but enough to be able to give you the ability to be able to overcome adversity.
Yeah, if you get beat all the time, you're just going to be disheartened, and you're just going to think, I can't do this. But I was losing, but I was learning and competing. Later on, I did a tour with Steve Davis just before I turned pro that my manager set up with Barry, and it was 6 nights with Steve Davis, who was the benchmark.
And he beat you every night, didn't he?
He took me apart every night. Absolutely took me apart. But after I thought, he's the benchmark. All the other players are not as good as him.
Yeah.
I don't need to improve that much to beat that to beat them. I know what I've got to do now to get to him.
How does Ian Doyle get himself into a position of influence with you? You've got your father in the background that had his father be a snooker player. He's already seen that there's a significant potential in you and is encouraging that. Where does Ian Doyle come into your world to gain instantaneous credibility and influence? What was it about him that suddenly gained and garnered influence over you?
He had an ironmongery business,
Right.
quite a decent business. He was quite a wealthy man. He owned a snooker club. That's where he first seen me play.
Right.
But I think he wanted to get in. I think he was a snooker fan and wanted to get in, and he's maybe seen me as a way in to get involved in the game.
Mm-hmm.
My dad wouldn't have been able to financially support me as a professional, pay for everything, the going on the road, staying in hotels, traveling, entry fees, all that sort of stuff. As an amateur, there wasn't really a lot of financial stuff needed. But even then, if we went down from Scotland to playing a pro-am in Essex, we had to get the train down to King's Cross, stay at some shithole in King's Cross, because my dad really couldn't afford. We couldn't stay in a nice place. Go to Essex, invariably get beat, because I wasn't very good in pro-ams when I travelled down south,
Right.
and go all the way back. So it was tough, and I think it would be unhealthy as well for our relationship, because to be in each other's pockets all the time. So Ian sort of seen a way of sort of structuring it where he wanted me to stay in the same hotels as likes of Steve Davis.
Right.
He said, if you're going to feel like them,
Yep.
You've got to stay where they are. You've got to feel. So he was taking care of all that, and all he expected from me to work my nuts off.
Where does the mindset start kicking in? I mean, we're talking about you initially having this instantaneous talent and ability on the game, and then we're talking about you getting into a situation where you're starting to be taking it more seriously. Then we've got an influence coming in your life in Ian Doyle that's making you take it more seriously and monetizing the situation and making you sort of grow up into it. But you're honing a mindset that goes on to dominate the sports. Where does yours come from? Does it simply come from having this positive influence in your life in Ian Doyle alongside a father that wanted to support you, and then that starts to build the belief system up? Or did you have it there already?
It's very, very difficult question, actually, because I actually not got a clue where it comes from, because there was no sort of sporting background. Again, whether my father's father had that killer instinct or not, I don't know. But it was through the work. I mean, as I say, the first 2 or 3 weeks I hated it being on my own, but after that, I could see my game improving.
Yeah, so
I could feel it. I could feel like my cue ball control. I could feel more often than not I was clearing the table. And then my first tournament, I won the Scottish Professional Championship at my first attempt, and I thought, yeah, this is. And then I started to think, well, this is what I have to. And then that gave me the appetite to keep doing it, because I started to see the benefits. But in terms of having that steel to win over and over and over again, I truly don't know where it came from. I think I enjoyed winning.
Yeah.
I think I enjoyed being. I always enjoyed being the target, being the guy that everyone wants to beat. I mean, I loved being the best player in the world. It was the best. I've seen some players get to world number one and then shrink because they don't like being the target. They'd rather be the underdog, whereas I was always wanted to be the best. So whether it's just when I got there, it's someone who watched the ingredient. It's very difficult to put.
Were you a very strong character?
I wouldn't have thought so. I wouldn't say so. No.
No?
No, not in other walks of life. I wouldn't say so.
Because he's reached. I mean, Ian Doyle. There's observations that are made, and they're sort of top-down observations about whether he took away certain aspects of your character and maybe made you a little bit boring, and he reached into your personal life and asked you to break up with your girlfriend.
Yeah.
What are these accurate assertions, or are they the stuff of myth?
I mean, pretty much. There was times when I wasn't. I was never allowed to be sort of mix with players. There was I wouldn't say there's a huge drinking culture in snooker and those, but all the top players are a lot older than me, so they obviously were allowed to drink and socialise and go for dinner, and I was never allowed to be anywhere near that. It was just me, Ian, and my dad at tournaments, and maybe the guy that drove me around. So yeah, I was sort of kept apart from all that, kept apart from any sort of distractions. And in a way, he was copying the sort of, both of us really. We looked at Steve Davis was the man we had to topple,
right? And
his regime, along with Barry, it was just like it was them against the world. Whether it was Ian and I against the world, and it was just like we'll go down this road. But I had to adhere to pretty much everything that he said, and that was his whole instructions. He said, if you don't like it, you can go off and do what you want.
Do something else, less meaningful.
Or you can go and play snooker, just what you were doing before, and see where it gets you. But he says you basically say you won't. There's obviously a little bit of guilt in it. He said he basically said a lot of the time that I wouldn't make it without him.
Yeah.
Without his guidance.
Right.
My dad never believed that.
Oh, yeah.
My dad always thought I'd be world champion. Right. My dad didn't think I needed to practice this regime that Ian put in. He didn't think I needed it.
Who was right?
He thought my talent was enough.
But who was right?
Ian.
Ian was right.
Yeah. I would never achieve that without that work ethic. I could never have, because I just wouldn't have had that discipline.
In your overall assessment, I'm assuming that the answer is yes, but maybe I'm wrong. Force for good, Ian, in everything that you achieved in snooker.
Oh yeah. The positives outweigh the negatives by a long way. There was a lot of negatives. Don't get me wrong.
Such as what?
There was times when I hated him. The way he would talk to me, the way he would think he ran my life and stuff. And as you get older and become a man, you start to go against that. You think, well, you can't talk to me like that. There was a time during the 90s where Ian said to a reporter that if Labour get in, Stephen's going to leave Scotland. Now, this had
Right,
nothing to do,
okay.
I got so much stick for it, nothing to do
Right.
with me. It was in the front page of the Sun, the Daily Record, which is obviously a Labour newspaper, and then so my dad was furious. He did an article in the Sun the next day saying it was nothing to do with Stephen and stuff. So they clashed on a lot of things. Ian was he liked the sound of his own voice, and he liked to be my mouthpiece and say thing, and that would rub
Sort
my
of Sven
parents up a
Garley
long
influence
time.
over you to some extent.
Yeah. He enjoyed being that character.
At which point is a tipping point change? Because you're in 1990, you become a world champion, right? 21 years of age, youngest ever world champion, which is a remarkable achievement. I know Higgins won it at 23, Davis at 23, Ronnie O'Sullivan at 26, but 21 years of
That's
age.
one of the records Ronnie can't beat.
This is it. Exactly right. Exactly right. But at which point did that tipping point change between you being someone that was being led along, guided, put in his place, reprimanded, disciplined, told how to think, told what to do, told who he can engage with, and at what point in your career does it start to go, well, hang on a fucking minute, I'm the world champion, I'm now a sought after commodity, I know my own mind. When did that start to change, that balance?
I don't think it changed until a lot later in my career, sort of late 90s.
Really?
Because I was, as I say, I was winning everything. I was assessed, so
if it weren't broke, you need to fix it.
Yeah. As I say, we had our arguments. I mean, he would come in at an interval in a match. I'd be maybe 4-0 down, 3-1 down, and absolutely, tear the shit out of me. Like, oh, you're buying this fucking Versace coat for $3,000. You're
Get
doing
yourself
this.
together.
You're doing this. You're doing this. You're all your boy like, and I'm like, and then he try and tell me what shot I'd play. I said, you tell me say what you like to me. Don't ever tell me what shot to play because you ain't got a clue about snooker, mate. Like that used to really rile me, but it worked. I mean, I presume in football's the same. Some players respond to that. Some players prefer an arm around the shoulder and say, "No, you're wonderful." But I responded to that, and I think even at the end of my career,
so he knew what buttons to push with you. Yeah.
And I think even at the end of the career,
smart.
like sort of before I retired, sort of 2000s up to I retired in 2012. Maybe I needed that kick up the backside, and maybe that's why my career went downhill so quickly at the end, is because I had no one to say, look at what you're doing.
Did you ever feel any pressure? I mean, you're going into these environments, and you're all of a sudden the scale and size of what you're experiencing is becoming far more significant, and the audiences, I suspect, are getting bigger, and the awarenesses of you getting bigger. A lot of the time in other sports, the mantra of young, dumb, and full of the other thing often is a sentiment of not knowing any better. Did that play out with you? Was it the fact that when you were as young as you were young? What did you win the Masters when you were 18?
18 or 19.
Yeah.
19 maybe. I think.
Right, so very young.
Yes.
Right. Was it a case of this is just I'm not fazed by this. I'm not aware of this. I'm in my own little world. None of this phases me.
Yeah, I mean,
and the impetuosity of youth or the naivety of youth comes to play.
I always played my best snooker, even as a junior, when there was a big crowd, the bigger the occasion. I didn't enjoy playing. Ian, before Turn Pre, would set up some money matches in clubs with other sort of top Scottish players, and there wouldn't be many people watching, and I couldn't get up for it. And I couldn't. It's one thing I've never been able to do is play for my own cash. Some players can do it. I'm not a natural gambler. I don't have that instinct. So if it's money coming out of my pocket, I don't like it.
Okay.
I don't mind playing.
That's
for
a Scottish mentality, isn't it?
Well, maybe. But I don't mind playing for 250 grand first prize of the world.
Yeah.
But I don't even think about the money.
Right.
Or winning 147 grand for maximum. I didn't think about the money.
Interesting psychology.
But if you'd say, all right, players would say, when you play for 100 quid, I went, no, I'll play for 100 quid. Part of it was because I'm not going to play any different. So I think, what's the point? But I just didn't like playing for money. But all through my career, going back to what we're saying, I always played my best on the biggest occasion.
Mm-hmm.
So going to the Masters for the first time as, I can't remember if it was 18 or 19, 2,500 people in the Wembley Conference Centre, didn't faze me one iota. I've always been natural. I've always just been able to do it. It's again, I don't know where it comes from. I don't know where that sort of inner sort of calm and confidence to completely block out what's there and just, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I call my autobiography Me and the Table, because that's invariably what it is all the time. was just me and the table. It didn't matter what was out anywhere else. A plug there, sorry for my book.
Good for you. Good for you. You've had an interesting relationship and rapport with Jimmy White over the years. And obviously there was this early stage in your career where you played Jimmy White in a tournament. He's your hero. And you go out and get beat 5-1. And I think Doyle gives you a barracking.
5-0, I think it was.
Was it 5-0?
Yeah.
Gives you a barracking.
Yeah.
What was going on in your head there? I mean, I've had experiences in my life, and they're not relatable like this. But I remember years and years ago when I was trying to build a business that I went on to sell for quite a lot of money. And one of the guys in the industry that I was really sort of admiring of was Sugar. And I ended up having to do a deal with Sugar. And it turned into a rather ugly conversation between me and Alan. You play your hero in Jimmy White's and get beat 5-1.
Yeah.
Was that because you froze in the moment? Was it because it got to you? Or was it because you're looking across the table going, I got imposter syndrome here, I don't quite belong in this environment?
So this was in a tournament called I forget what the sponsor was. It used to be called the Lang Supreme Masters, where the 7 best players in the world would come up and the token Scottish professional champion would play.
Yeah.
So invariably every year, the likes of players in the past would just get absolutely humped the first round. So I'm playing. I thought, well, this is going to be different now. I'm playing, but I'm drawn against Jimmy, who, as I say, was my hero when I first picked up a cue. He was the one that I used to video the most, watch all his shots. Just the flair he had, his cue action. I tried to copy his cue action. I tried to copy Steve's cue action. Then it's when you realise you've got to have your own. But I just loved the way he played. I love his character. He was a bit. I've always had sort of looked and sort of been a little bit jealous of sort of the rebels and the people who do what they want and have a good time. Where I'm this
more disciplined,
held by a tightrope and get practicing and do that sort of stuff. First time I met him actually, or close to him, I was in the Irish Amateur Championship in Dublin, and he was over to present a prize. And I was talking to one of his friends, and he came over and he said, "Oh, this is his friend. Said this is Stephen." And I said, "Jimmy." So I shook his hand like couldn't believe I was meeting Jimmy White. And then Jimmy White said, "Come on, we're going out." And he said, "Well, I'm just chatting to Stephen." Jimmy went, "Fuck Stephen. Come on, let's go out." And like a little thing in me, I think, oh, all right. They say never meet your heroes or you're disappointed. Well, fuck Stephen. Come on, let's go out. But that match, right? So there's 2 times my dad never got angry at me, never shouted at me anything. I've seen junior leagues where parents are, it's just embarrassing. 2 times. One when I was playing a junior tournament. I was getting beat and I was sat with my head down, and he was standing beside me. He just said, "Get your head up." So that was the only time he ever. And then that time when I lost, Ian and my dad both said, "You're a disgrace tonight," because all I did was sit and was in awe of Jimmy.
Right.
All I did was sit and admire him. I can't believe I'm playing Jimmy White in this, and wasn't in the match focused anything. But that was the first.
Well, was that a watershed moment for you? Was that?
Yeah. God, yeah.
That's not happening again.
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing that again. I'm in this place now because I deserve to be here.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I'm gonna. If someone's going to beat me, they're going to beat me.
Yeah, exactly. He might beat me the next 10 times we play, but I'm not going to sit there and just admire. Because I was kind of in a trance. I was just following him around the table with my eyes, and then if he missed, I'm still like, yeah, it was embarrassing when I look back on it, and quite rightly, I got bollocked for it.
You presided over a period of time, not just one of these moments where you're dominant for a year or 18 months. You were a dominant force in snooker for a decade. Right? You win 5 world titles in a row. You've got the longest run of wins in the Crucible history. You are the number 1 in the sport for 8 consecutive seasons. This is a remarkable mentality that you must have had. 2 questions. This time where you stood astride snooker, what was that like? And what does this mentality that you must have to be so dominant for so long?
I think one of the there's probably a few factors. I think one of the factors is that I was greedy. I enjoyed winning. When I started winning, I wanted to win more. One of the reasons because I didn't get too emotionally involved in a defeat or a win. Right. Even less for a win. You never ever seen me cry or go like crazy or look like, because for me that was job done. And the next day, when's the next one? It was expected of you. Where's the next one?
Because Roger Federer was like that. He was like that. He was basically, not to use the Rudyard Kipling expression too easily, but you treat both imposters the same way. You win, you get on with it. You lose, you get on with it, and you go to the next one and make sure you win the next time round.
I mean, the sort of the intensity of the emotion of losing is far more intense than the one of winning. You know, I remember loads of shots that have cost me titles more than ones that I've won.
Right.
Because that stayed with me more, and that was more an intense an emotion. When I won, it was just like, okay, that was my job to come here and win this. I'm not going to start crying and you know, I gave a fist, but I can't even give a fist because I thought that's what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't
was
really
expected of you,
yeah, I just thought, well, maybe I should show some emotion. Because in the end, people were thinking, you show no emotion. And I think that's one of my attributes, because I didn't get really that involved in victories.
Yeah.
Because I think if you do, then it takes you a while to get back to the next one. You think you know, I've seen so many players that win one tournament and they disappear for 6 months because they've won it, and that's like, oh my God, I've won a tournament. And then
I've climbed my Everest. Yeah.
Yeah, but to me, it was always, you know, where's the next one really? And then I had this. I just took for granted winning basically.
Yeah.
I had this. I knew I was the best.
Yeah. Which
obviously helps. I just knew I was the best, and I knew if I played my best, no one could live with me, and no matter who they were. I mean, even all through the 90s, I just, you know, this is the famous story I put in my book. I mean, before I went down to one World Championship, I asked my ex-wife to bring a jacket down for me for the final party before it even started.
Yeah,
and I was it was matter of fact, just like, can you bring that down with you? And it was just like, people would say like, how could you? And it wasn't like being.
But you didn't make that public knowledge, did you?
Oh no, not at the time. No. The one slip I had was, because I've never ever even said, oh, I'm going to win the World Championship. Or the one slip I had, I lost in the Irish Masters, which was always a traditional tournament before the World Championship, 2 or 3 weeks before.
Yeah.
And I lost this bad match, and the reporters were asking me in the press conference, said, "Oh, you play bad," and I just went, yeah, but I win the World Championship. And when I picked up, they went, what? Would you? Because they never heard me say something like I did, but I didn't. It just, and that's the only time I've really said anything that, because I hate people that say they're going to do it, because you can only fall down from it. There's no point in saying you're going to, because there's only down. There's only one negative.
This 1990 win to win the first World Championship. You'd won tournaments before, but was it like a coming out party for you? Was it like, yeah, here it is now. Here I am. This is it. Look around. I'm here now.
Yeah, I'd won my first major tournament.
Did it change things for you, I suppose I'm saying?
The Rothmans Grand Prix was my first major win when I was 18. I think I was 87. All right. And that was the first time I'd beaten Steve Davis in a major tournament.
Was that a benchmark for you?
For me, that was a turning point. Yeah. That was for me, because he'd beaten me some like 15 or 16 times in a row.
Did you like him as a bloke?
I didn't know him. I mean, nobody knew. He didn't let anyone in. So I didn't. I'd sort of, if we travelled maybe to Hong Kong, we'd be on a plane and you'd maybe say hello, but he wouldn't say, he didn't socialise with anybody. And that was another thing that sort of Ian and I copied. I was kept away from that side of it. Because I think that's right. If you're, especially in individual sport, if you're competing against someone, you don't want to be the best mate.
I think that's right.
It's not. I mean, now you look at this, I look at snooker now. Ronnie doesn't really socialise with any other players. Judd doesn't really. These are the best players at the moment. Neil Robertson doesn't really, a little bit. They socialise more than they used to. They talk backstage before they even walk on, and I'm like, what are you doing? I can't, I'm like, I'm similar. I hear Roy Keane talking sometimes when he's seen people being friendly in the tunnel before they go out, and he's fuming, and I'm the same.
Oh, I agree.
The camera goes on two players before they go out, and like Selby's the worst. He's like, goes up to his opponent and he's chatting and joking. I'd just like, I'd turn and walk away. So I think that's, but Steve was like that. I mean, I'd walk down a corridor and you wouldn't even get a look, never mind a hello. So I didn't know him at all. No, I obviously know him a lot. Would get on great now, but yeah, then no, he was.
No, but I think that's the right attitude.
But again, because when you played him, you were like intimidated.
Well, you were in a battle,
because you know nothing about him.
So. But you're in a battle. For me, as when I was an owner of a football club, I didn't want to shake hands with the other side. I didn't want to go in the boardroom and drink their fucking Chardonnay and spend time talking to them about whatever else. I wanted to go in there, beat their team. Yeah. Win 3 points and piss off back down the motorway, and it was competitive for me. And I think it must have been, obviously for you guys as sportsmen. It really does boil my proverbial when I'm watching players on the football field swapping shirts and swapping pleasantries, and I think Keane is absolutely right. The reason I ask you about did you get on with Davis, because one of the things that I picked up on when I was looking at you and trying to get some information about you was the way that you might have been received coming into the sport and how these people behave with you, because they're big characters. Higgins, in for particular case in point, where he's playing you in a match, he's being very difficult and tricky with you and kind of bullying you. Yeah, he's talking into the media after the game in a very different fashion. Yeah. So I kind of, when you first arrive on the scene and probably putting a few people's noses out of joint, winning a world championship at 21 years of age. What was the overriding reception like? What were the top players like towards you?
I think Steve was fine because he still believed, even when I won the world title the first time, he was still number one.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, it wasn't, because I got to number one in the semi-final by beating John Parrott. That was one of the reasons I was so comfortable in the final, because I was world number one as well. But Steve wouldn't have felt anything. But I think a few of them would have, especially with sort of 18 and 19. I mean, there's a few of them grumbled when I turned pro. I was too young. They said that I should never turn pro then, and
None of their business, is it?
Well, it's not. But they said, he's going to take too many beatings and he's going to be disheartened and his like.
Right. Okay.
But Higgins was, when I turned pro, Higgins was unbelievable to me. I mean, every tournament he was like, come and practice.
Was he?
Whether he could see something in me that he liked. I used to practice him almost every tournament. He said, come on, Stephen, let's have a session.
Because you'd have been a very different personality though, wouldn't you?
Me?
To him?
Oh my God! I wouldn't say boo to anybody. I was so shy. I still am pretty much, but I wouldn't say hello. I would say hello, but I wouldn't have a conversation because these were all my heroes and stuff. So I'd be too embarrassed. But I mean, he would say, so they only say, okay, yeah, I'll come and have a game, and that's it. We wouldn't chat. We'd be playing, and it'd be amazing to play with someone like Alex Higgins, and he's like, it was incredible. And then, this kept on going. Then I started winning tournaments, and then I became the enemy.
Now you're a rival, yeah?
Yeah, I became the enemy. So it was like the sort of reincarnation of Steve. Obviously, I had this battle with Steve through the 80s where they hated each other. And then now it was me, and it was always, when I won a couple of tournaments, it was all right. But then I started being a regular winner, and it wasn't good. And he's, I back to what I said. He made snooker. Snooker wouldn't be what it is today without Alex Higgins. He transformed it, and it's one of the reasons it was so important. I went to his funeral in Belfast. But yeah, I mean, we had some run-ins because when he had a drink, he wasn't a nice character.
Yeah,
he was. I mean, I've never seen anyone turn the atmosphere in a room as quickly as when Alex would walk in.
Right.
And the thing you're referring to, when the last time I beat him in the UK Championship. It was. I mean, to lead up to it, we're playing a qualifier. So there's 8 tables. It's not on TV. There's 8 tables. There's four. There's a corridor down the middle. So there's 4 tables this side, 4 tables this side. So he walks in the morning session. First went to shake hands with the devil. I'm like, okay, okay, because you always wonder what mood he's going to be in, and I'm thinking, okay, great, this is going to be a long day. I better win this quickly and try and get. So I think I'm 6-2 ahead of the first session. So the evening session comes. So Steve's at this table, I'm at this table. So Steve's doing what he does, just basically standing like that. Just not even. That's what Steve did. Just stood like a statue. I'm standing pretty much the same thing, but just no. Alex comes around the corner and he sort of staggers around. You think, oh no. He goes up to Steve, and I'm in earshot. And he says, "I'm going to fuck him tonight, Steve." So Steve just going to just goes like that with his eye. Doesn't do much. Just like doesn't even move his head. He just goes like that. He knows he's seen enough of that. So we go in and I beat him 9-2 quickly. And he shakes my hand and he says, "Up your ass, you."
So he's a poet as well, then.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, oh god, so I go and tell my manager, Ian, and everything.
What was your reaction to that? Did you just go?
I was just
whatever.
But I was a bit like, you're a wee bit scared. You're a wee bit thinking, this is a bit, it's not nice. Why, you're like, you just shake hand, you sort of like, and then want to get out there. And I said, so I went and told Ian and John, the guys who drive in, and Ian being Ian, wanted to like, this is a disgrace. It's a disgrace. I'm going to tell. So he went and told the press. So that's when Alex did his press conference. He said, "Oh, there's been reports that you were abusive to Stephen," and he said, "No, all I said was, well done. You're a bit lucky." And that's pretty much Alex.
Ronnie O'Sullivan. I mean, obviously you two have got a rivalry in some shape or form. You've played one another a number of times. He's got the numbers on his side against you.
Yeah.
But I suspect that's because of the timing of your careers. Would that be different if you were playing one another in your pomp? Would the records be different? Do you think?
I mean, 1992, Ronnie, John Higgins, and Mark Williams came on the scene as 3 outstanding talents.
Yep.
Ronnie, the most talented of the 3. Each of them has their own thing that makes them better than the other 2. But Ronnie's is obviously the outstanding talent that the game's ever seen. People talk about like the Alex Higgins, Jimmy Way, but Ronnie's a different class to both of them
than the game's ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, he's just
including you.
Yeah, I think.
Why'd you say that?
I could play all the shot. I could play all the shots.
Yeah.
And I think it's now. Even I forget how good I was.
Yeah.
You know, I look back on some of this stuff because you go through TikTok, and I'm seeing, funny enough, popping up now is Alex Higgins a lot of my TikTok reels, and like some of the shots you think, wow, he's a genius.
Yeah.
He wouldn't live in today's game because he didn't score heavily enough.
Yeah.
Didn't make enough big breaks.
Right.
Whereas I did take that game. I was a very heavy scorer at all times, and I think, like Ronnie has taken the game to a better level than I did. There's no doubt about it. But I would still.
Is that because the game's changed and lent itself to that, and the disciplines are different, or is it simply because he's unique?
I think he's unique.
Right.
I think he's unique. I think he has. First of all, he's a winner. He's and he'll do anything that's required on the table to win. He'll adapt. He's the best I've ever seen at adapting to conditions, opponents. And the fact he wouldn't really do anything to win. When he won the World Championship, the COVID one, there was no crowds.
Yeah.
Mark Selby was going to beat him in that semi-final. Ronnie decided to just start hitting the balls 100 mile an hour over the table. It done Mark's head in, and Ronnie went on a win. So he's prepared to go to any level to win.
How does that fly in the face then of him quitting against you in 2006? Is that just a different Ronnie on an evolutionary curve that's learning his trade and going to build the character that we now say will win at all costs? Yet he's not playing well against you in 2006 and walks off the table.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we spoke about. I mean, I had him on my YouTube channel, another plug, and we spoke about it. And
Is it a good YouTube channel?
That's amazing.
Fantastic.
Amazing. Doing very well, thank you. But he had things going on in his life that I mean, he's, you know, but it's well documented. He's not had the easiest upbringing. I think he had things going on that wasn't helping him. You know, I go back to, you know, players being, you know, you cannot play top sport if you've got things. On your
agree.
mind. If you've got things in the background, you just forget
it's a
it.
distraction,
and
especially especially in individual sports, even more so.
An individual that requires 100% concentration and focus on what you're doing, because it's so. I mean, you're dealing in play, and you're dealing in fractions, you're dealing in millimeters when it comes to positional play. And yeah, I mean, that together with not playing well and losing for it, and you know, that he obviously he quit. I mean, it was one of the most random things I've ever seen in my career. But yeah, I wouldn't be quick to criticize him for or be hard on him, because, you know, as I say, I don't know what was going on in his life at that time.
When you analyse the rivalry, because it's a natural comparison, not just because I want to bring you're a man in your own right. You don't need me to dovetail you in with someone else, but because he's just recently eclipsed some of the records that you've got in terms of or equal to World Championship and superseded you on the amount of Triple Crown wins. Yeah. Right. So with that in mind, how would you, when you look at the competitive rivalry that you've got on a personal and competitive level, how would you summarise it?
Well, I mean, I wasn't happy when he equalled my 7. I mean, you know, I mean, people asked me before, and I said, no, I don't want. Of course, I don't want him to equal my record. It was my record, and it was one of the ones that, throughout my career, Steve had won 6, and I wanted to win 7. And I said, because when I was talking to Ronnie on the thing, and I said, surely you must now. It's all about winning 8, right? Because when I won 6 to equal Steve, the next day I said, I have to win 7. What's the point? I have to win 7. So I said, surely that's how. And Ronnie being Ronnie, he deflected it a little bit and didn't want to admit. But I know he does. I know he wants to win 8. And then he will be the GOAT, obviously, if he wins 8. So yeah, but we've had this. You know, I mean, it's obviously started in '92. We've had so many great matches, so many matches when it's been like end-to-end stuff. You know, 100 break, 100 break, 100 break. But definitely near the end of my career, he had the better of me. But the last time I think I played my best snooker was the match 2002 when he mouthed off to the press before we were going to play that he was going to send me back to Scotland, my sad little life, and it was so funny because the morning.
Where did that come from?
He'd been mucking around with Nassim Hamed and his brothers in Sheffield, so I think they'd been trying to build it up to be that kind of a boxing match type thing.
Right.
So yeah, the guy who used to drive me around the morning of that match, he brought the news. He's seen what Ronnie said, because I had no inkling. So I'm reading a thing, but what I didn't care about the send me back to my sad little life stuff. I mean, that was just like. But he said I've never liked Stephen, and he said the only reason I speak to him is because I think I have to.
Right. So
I thought, well, okay, if you don't like me, I'm going to not speak to you then.
Okay.
And it was the only grudge match I think I've ever played in my career, and there was no way I was losing that match, or you're going to have to scrape me off the table to beat me. And that's probably the last time I played great. And after that, I think he beat me every time, I think.
If he does eclipse it and get 8, what will your overriding reaction be?
There'll be admiration.
Yeah.
Because, as I say, he's taken the game to a new level. And I think his longevity is phenomenal.
This decline, I mean, in terms of the experiences that you had, you know, in the 98-99 season, you go into, was it the Masters, get beat 9-0 in the first round?
The UK Championship,
Championship, get beat 9-0 in the first round. Yeah, at the end of that season, you win the World Championship again.
Yeah.
Was this 9-0 defeat the beginning of the challenge for you, or because it doesn't seem to be, because you go and win a world championship, it's the last world championship that you win, and then we start to see the changing of you, don't we?
Yeah, I think it was the 9-0 wasn't it was just one of those days where I just wasn't playing well. The guy was playing well. He was getting all the run of the balls that was going, and it got to 3-4. And I said, I can't get back into this match. Just the way I'm playing, and it was one of those things. But it was probably the sort of one of the sort of first signs of sort of frailty mentally, because I'd been behind in a lot of matches. I mean, Mike Hallett in the Masters final, 8-2 behind him and won. I'd been behind him and got back into them, but it's probably the first signs to me that I can't see a way back into this match. I can't get myself to
right.
But then after that season, an old coach that I used to have called Frank Callan, he came back in to sort of work with me a bit. Not that my game was technically gone, but maybe I just needed someone to look in from the outside, and sometimes a little thing will spark
a
something.
Tweak, yeah.
But yeah, the last 3 or 4 tournaments, I think I won one, got to a semi-final, then won the World Championship, which from the way the season had gone before was incredible. I'd lost 3 times to Tony Drago. I'd never lost in my whole life in one season. But yeah, it was the start of not feeling dominant, not feeling like the best player in the world.
Tell me about I know there's a terminology that I don't think you particularly like, right? About the condition that you developed that brought about the deterioration in your game. I know it's a terminology called yips.
Yes.
They use it in golf, which is the inability to be able to putt. They use it in darts, which Eric Bristow, I think, had, which was the inability to release the darts.
Yeah.
I won't use the word yips in terms of describing it, but tell me about what it was and what your condition was that brought about ultimately the deterioration in your game.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the first time it happened would maybe be probably that season, 99, maybe 98. I would play a shot and I just didn't. It's like what happens. You're supposed to go through the ball, accelerate nice and smooth. So for some reason, this hand that delivers the cue tightens up, and you don't go through it. And so I played a shot and I thought that was weird, and I thought didn't feel good.
You remember this specific shot?
Yeah, I don't remember a specific, but I remember there was a shot. There would be a shot in that season where it was round about that time where, and then I think okay that didn't feel good, and then it would happen maybe at 2 tournaments up the road, and then it would happen maybe a couple of times. Then you start to think. Then I started to avoid playing certain shots because I thought, oh, that happened, and what if that happens again? And then then your game is good because you're playing the wrong shot all the time. So it sunk deeper and deeper and deeper into my game, and I had 2 or 3 coaches that had different ways of trying to solve it. Some Terry Griffiths tried to shorten my backswing, hold the cue tighter all the time, to try and take any sort of anything out of it. If you're gripping the cue the same way the whole time, then you can't tighten, kind of thing. I got to number 1. Back to number 1 doing that, winning tournaments, but then it was still happening. Another coach I've tried, but yeah, I mean to this day, when I play in tournaments, there's shots that I know it's going to happen, and it's completely debilitating.
But what I mean it's physical, it's psychological. What is it?
It starts physical and then becomes psychological. Yeah,
so you're becoming a self-perpetuating philosophy.
Yeah. So I mean, for instance, my last tournament I played in a couple of weeks ago, just a qualifier. I played a shot and then knew I was going to be on this red in a certain way that I couldn't pot it. and I miss it. So that's psychological.
But that's psychological,
That's
isn't it?
psychological.
Yeah.
But that's how sort of deep it sunk in. And everyone said to me, "Why are you thinking like that? Just play." And when I'm on my own playing,
Yeah.
I don't do it. So it's almost become like
So
like
when
a
you're
stage fright kind of thing.
right,
Because when I'm on my own playing, like I'll say, because people, when you go to tournaments, people say, "How are you playing?" I don't practice anywhere near as much as I should,
Yeah.
even to play as a wild card. But when I do my own, I go around and I just play, and it's easy, and I do everything, and it's I never miss a ball. And then I go to as soon as I go in front, I have to prove myself in front of anyone. It goes,
and there's nothing, and no sports psychology has worked, or I mean, I'm assuming they have tried to work with you.
Well, yeah, I've not gone in deep into it.
Really?
I perhaps I should have done. Lots of people said you should have asked Steve Peters if he worked with you. I don't think he'd work with anyone else if he's worked with Ronnie anyway, but someone to try and sort this out. I had one guy called Stephen Hendry who's kind of does a bit of both technical and psych, and he's asked me to try and watch old videos of myself winning and just look at my cue action, look at. But I just said to him, but all that does to me is tell me how shit I am now. I took it completely the wrong way.
It makes it worse.
Yeah, he says that's not how you're supposed to take that. So you're supposed to look at it and say that's how you can play, and that's how you do play. But I took it the other way. I say, yeah, look how far I've sunk. Because I was very always been
it's
hugely
strange.
harsh on
Where was
myself.
Ian Doyle in all this then?
Ian had left the sort of company, the management company,
right?
by then,
Okay.
by sort of early 2000s.
Right.
He
Because
lost his wife, and
you're still a young man then, and you're 31 then, aren't you? 32.
Yeah.
Because it without wanting to diagnose something that you've experienced, and obviously it's real, because if it manifests itself in you, it's real, and if it manifests itself in Eric Bristow in darts and whoever else in golf, it's real. But it feels like a psychological block that's coming. I always live by the mantras, like the amateur golfer and the professional golfer on the 18th tee with a water hazard in front of them, and the amateur golfer says, "Don't hit the water, don't hit the water," and the professional golfer says, "Hit the green, hit the green." You hit what you see.
Yeah.
But something's changed in your psyche and the wiring of the way that you think about things that you've not been able to overcome. But you can, because when you're doing it without people watching you have, and you're hitting the ball as you always did.
I know, because when I play, there's a guy that's sort of coaching me at the moment, not to be coached to come back and win, but just to. He's got a method called Sight Right, and Mark Williams, he was using it. He came back and won 4 tournaments, including the World Championship. He said, just have a go with him, just like see if he can, for an interest. So I went with him just to give me something of an interest to practice. And we were together in a room. He still thinks I can win the World Championship because of the way I play on my own in a room.
Right.
But as soon as I get out in a match against, as I said, people who shouldn't be on the same table as me, it just, I'm losing every match. Because someone quoted on Instagram the other day, why is Stephen doing this to himself, like playing these wild card matches? And in a way, I agree. But in the way, I just think maybe one match it might,
might click.
It might click.
Yeah. How debilitating was it for you?
Oh, hugely.
You're going to be sat. You're going to have to be sat. I mean, James Wade, the dart player, talked about having panic attacks on the oche and holding himself together. And I've been in that situation where I've been on a major television show having panic, because I used to have panic attacks, having a panic attack, thinking, please don't come to me. And the problem for me is I was the most trappiest person on the panel, so they always came to me. But with you, you've got to sit there in a game where you're no longer dominating the bays. You're sitting there watching players that you don't, in the back of your mind, shouldn't be carrying your cue. And you're sat there for significant. I mean, what kind of effect does that have on you as an individual?
Yeah, I mean, it's just you just sink lower and lower into your chair, and into that, you absolutely rip yourself to pieces in your head as well. And I mean, I would just call myself every name under the sun. You're useless. You can't really look at you. What was that? What sort of shot was that? And I'm watching these players who I say couldn't lace my boots playing the shots that I can't play. Someone who's ranked like 70 in the world. Yeah. And I think I can't even play that shot that he's just played. And it's like, yeah, and it's and as I say, and I never sorted it. So,
all right.
And that's the main reason I retired is because I just couldn't. I had no confidence.
Yeah.
So my game was shot basically.
It's a remarkable transformation, isn't it? From ultimate confidence to being bereft of confidence, almost.
Like I made a 147
overnight.
my last World Championship, and it's like out of 36 shots you play, I hit 6 properly. Yeah. But people come in, oh my God, you're back. You won a 147. You win this. It was unbelievable. I said, but you don't realise how shit
much
that was.
how much of a struggle it was for me.
Yeah, it was horrible. You know,
Or how good I must be to have even done it in the basis of not being able to hit the ball the way I want to.
I know. Well,
that's the other side of the argument, isn't it?
What I say to Steve Feeney, the coach guy, I says, look, I hate having to try hard at this game.
Yeah.
I never used to have to try hard. It was easy. And now, you know, when I play it, it's like, oh my God, every shot's like a pint of blood. It's like...
Do you miss playing at the level you played?
Oh
do you miss the
yeah.
competitivity?
Yeah.
Or
I don't.
Are you at peace with the journey that you've been on? Because your achievements are remarkable, and I've said it 4 or 5 times. And I'm not saying it because you're sat across me, but if you dominate a sport for 10 years in the manner that you did, and achieve the things that you achieved, then there is some body of work there that you must be able to gain some peace from, irrespective of whether you think it came to an end slightly precipitously.
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like a different person that did that, or
Right.
a different life. But of course, I'm completely proud of what I achieved. I mean, I achieved incredible things, and to be fair, I didn't even realize how good I was until I was doing my book 3 or 4 years ago, because I had to research all the tournaments I played and everything. I was watching it on YouTube, and I thought, fuck me, you were good. You know what I mean? I had all the shots that everyone had, but but now looking back, it's so long ago. What's the 90s now? 30 years ago. It's incredible. But yeah, it's I miss. Obviously, I work for TV, and you're in the arena before a final.
Yeah.
Talking to the host, you've got a microphone in your hand. I'd much rather have a cue in my hand. That's what you miss. You miss the buzz of playing in an arena. Being at the Crucible in the final session. That's what you miss. I don't miss playing 6 hours a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week. I don't miss that at all. But yeah, I mean, I'm so jealous every time I'm commentating as a player walking out in front of a big crowd.
What do you think of the state of snooker at this moment in time? But people, the audience of 10 million was the norm. We're now down into territories of 3.5 million. And there's lots of reasons for it. There's more channels, there's more sports, there's more awareness, and it's a different generation consuming things in a very different way. So actually some might say that 3.5 million viewers is very good given the nature of the amount of sport that's being broadcast on TV. But what's your overall take on the state of it?
I think the game is in a good state because there's lots of tournaments for the players to play. And I do worry about whether sponsorship will be a problem. Obviously, we had tobacco sponsorship, which was huge, that had to go. Kazoo now sponsor quite a lot, but I don't know how long that will last. So there is that sort of always that fear of what is sponsorship going to attain itself. Barry is confident that he will be on top of that and there'll be no problem.
Right.
But as I said, it's a good time to be a player.
Is it?
China's opening up again. That was a huge market for snooker.
Right.
There's now, I think, 2 tournaments this year. There'll probably be 3 or 4 next year. So the worldwide game, obviously, post-COVID is recovering again. But there's a lot of tournaments that look a bit samey. I think that's the problem, I think, with the low viewing figures. A lot of ones
What can they do? Because it does have this.
It's hard.
It does have this image. I watched snooker when I was a kid. I don't watch it so much now. Okay, different tournaments have different levels of the amount of frames that they play. Whether it's a 35 frame tournament in the World Championships or it's a 19 frame tournament in one of the other tournaments. So there's a slight different in format, but it hasn't really changed in that much. I used to go out watching Pot Black and stuff like that, and all the other sports, with the exception of football. Football's been packaged now because of Sky, and it's got this wonderful feel about it in terms of the imagery. But a lot of the other sports, whether it be cricket or darts, have changed their formats and made it more viewer-centric and probably more modern for the next generation of snooker, for the next generation of fans. Do you think snooker needs to do that in order to cut through?
Yeah, I struggle to see what you can... Snooker's a very difficult sport, I think, to make look different, I think.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's tournaments where there's 1 frame, there's a shot clock. Obviously, the World Championship, the Masters, these big events stand apart. I think snooker's now maybe struggling with the fact there's not enough stars.
Yeah.
You've got Ronnie. Judd Trump is obviously a tremendous flair player. But if you walk down the street outside, how many people will recognise him now?
The lineup, would you?
So yeah, I think that snooker suffers for that a little bit. And I go to some venues, and I spoke to Barry about this on my channel. Like I said, you go to some venues and it's like the players are there's nothing there. There's just a big empty room. There's no player. Whereas I know tobacco's a different thing, but they used to put on these lounges, and you'd be, you feel like you're at a prestigious event. He said, I'm stuck in the dark ages. It's not like that now. Players just come to play and they want to go. But
Right.
I've spoke to players, they don't enjoy being at the venues a lot of the time. The bigger events, possibly, yeah, but a lot of events are pretty soulless. But I'd go back to, if you're a player, it's great because you've got lots of tournaments and pretty much all year round.
Yeah.
Because when we played, certainly early 90s, mid 90s, after the World Championship finished bank holiday in May, there was nothing till September. So the whole summer off. Whereas now it's pretty much all year round. So there's lots of events, but I think speaking to the players, they want to be able to earn more money. The players go out, there's not enough money. And
when they see the other bleeding sports, they probably that's probably amplified in their minds, isn't it?
And I think a lot of the players they can't. They're pretty restricted in what they can do outside the environments of the tournaments, because you sign a player's contract and you've got to stick by that. You're not allowed to do anything else.
Right.
So it's difficult for the players to sort of monetize themselves as well in the game. But by that token, Barry took the game over whenever he did, and the difference has been incredible. Whatever you say about Barry, he does know how to sort of create a sport and create. I mean, what he's done with darts has been
remarkable.
Phenomenal.
I mean, myself and Barry have had many a different view, and when he was
the worrying part, I said to that Barry, because Eddie doesn't like snooker. So the worrying thing, if Barry ever decides to totally retire and go, then Eddie hates snooker. So what's the future?
Don't get me started on Eddie Hill. Right?
I know he's your mate, but I won't go there.
Is there a generation to follow? I mean, this should always be, but currently I can't see where it is. Is there a generation of stars that are following Ronnie O'Sullivan? How important is Ronnie to the game of snooker at this moment in time?
Oh, it's hugely important. If he's not in a tournament, it's not the same.
Isn't that a worry?
And that is a worry. I mean, listen, I think his truly great performances are going to be fewer and farther between now than they were, because
but his name
he's getting old. He's got other things doing. He's getting old. So that the fact of getting himself up to play in a tournament is going to be harder and harder. On his day, he's still the best player by a mile. If he plays his best, he wins. So he is the superstar of snooker. He's the only player that won't go to China unless he's getting appearance money, and he'll get it. No, as far as I know, no other players are charging appearance money. So he's the sort of lone true star in snooker. So that's a worry. Although the other players play an unbelievable standard of snooker, the Robertsons, the Trumps, the Williamses, the Selby's, they're all unbelievable snooker players. But unfortunately, and I think they know this, he is the one that brings there's that little bit of stardust to a tournament.
Punditry. And obviously, this YouTube stuff that you're going, where you're doing your Q-tips. Yeah. You enjoy that? You get a lot from it?
I love it, actually.
Yeah,
it's good. And Davis made a joke. He said, because he said you never used to speak to anyone,
right?
And he said, now you're a pest because you want everyone to be on your channel. And when you walk in the room, everyone's running away. So he wants to talk to us now. But no, I'm enjoying it because it's I mean, listen, at the end of the day, snooker's all I know. So it's got to be something with snooker. And the fact of getting the players on and just having a chat about how they started, like being the interviewer and going through, I'm really enjoying it. And also we've had 2 or 3 people obviously that are not snooker players. So in the future, you might want to come if you can hold a cue. You said you'd.
Yeah, I'm gonna not write checks that I can't cash, but I wouldn't mind having a lesson off you. But sure.
I'm really enjoying it. It's something that I never thought that I would ever do. I mean, obviously, I started on Instagram doing instructions and doing shots and getting people to write in what shots they want to play. And obviously, you want to try and monetize it and go that step further to the YouTube, and now it's going really well. I enjoy the punditry. There's some matches that are more exciting than others that I don't really get involved with. I got a sort of reputation as a kind of pantomime villain when I came on, because I was quite forthright in my comments that some of the players didn't like.
Well, they all don't like that, don't they? In every sport, when a former player comes on, and there's this sort of unwritten code that you're not supposed to say things about players because you were once one yourself, and you would know how that felt.
Yeah, but I like to think what I've done in my career allows me to be critical of
as long as you're fair and authentic.
Exactly. Well, I just say, look, I say what I see. If it's a shit shot, I'll say it's shit. If it's a good shot, I'll say it's good. At the end of the day, that's all you can do as a commentator or a pundit. You can just say what you see
and be authentic about it. Yeah. What do you think of Obviously, with the moniker that you've been given, which is the King of the Crucible, what's your reaction when you see the potential of the World Championships being moved from there, and the ideas that may be being mooted about, everyone's favourite subject right now, the Middle East?
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Well, I think I'm right in saying that.
Do you think the Crucible should be protected in the same way things like Wimbledon are protected? No one would have Wimbledon in bloody Middle East, would they?
I do, but again, I'll be called sort of old school. I spoke to Judd about it in China, and Judd would like to see it in Saudi Arabia if the first prize becomes $2 million.
Yeah.
So, but I said, well, how would you feel about playing a World Championship final in front of 20 people?
Yeah.
I said, it's not. I mean, surely that's not. He said, I don't care as long as you're getting the big prize money. Yeah. I would hate to see, and I think even Barry, I think he's asked the council to build a new Crucible with bigger capacity in Sheffield, so Sheffield can keep being the sort of the city of snooker as.
But
as
even
it
that in it, that matter if you take. I mean, what is the capacity?
975, I think, and there's no atmosphere like it.
Yeah,
no atmosphere like it.
But even if he builds it that's significantly greater, it's not going to generate the revenues that if the Middle Eastern guys want to do something, they're going to put the money behind it, and if the current players aren't interested in the tradition and just see the opportunity, which I can understand, by the way, I'm not criticising them.
The worrying thing I would say is we played in Dubai in the early 90s through, I think, 2 or 3 years, a ranking tournament, and basically it was just dropped like a stone when they weren't interested anymore. And that would be my fear if Saudi Arabia took it and thought, well, we're bored of this snooker, don't want it anymore, then where'd you go from there? That would be my fear.
2 questions for you to finish off. What does the future hold for you? And when you look back over yourself and your career, how would you describe yourself?
What the whole from in future? I don't really know. Obviously, the progression of obviously the YouTube stuff, but I don't know. I always wanted to have some sort of legacy in the types of the sport's huge in China and the UK, but having some sort of Stephen Hendry Academy sort of thing, Stephen Hendry Snooker, whether it's the most upmarket snooker clubs in the world or something like that. I always thought that would be pretty cool, just to have your name out there as a legacy to what you've achieved. But at the moment, no, that's not on the agenda. But in terms of what I mean, I'm still, people still recognise me and say, you comment and you're the greatest or whatever, and that's cool that people remember how good you are. But I mean, it seems so long ago that I don't even think of myself really as what I did. Yeah, I mean, it's quite. As I say, I'm quite hypercritical of myself, and the fact that I kind of sometimes think of myself as a bit of a nobody now, just a commentator, because it's so long ago, and it's not until someone sort of says something that you think, okay, that
was me.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I think you had a remarkable career. And thank you for joining me today and being so upfront with me.
Thank you very much.
Upfront with me, Simon Jordan, is brought to you by William Hill. Future episodes can be found on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. 18+, please gamble responsibly.